In this video, I'll show you how to automate MidJourney and the new LumaLabs video generator to build beautiful faceless videos for TikTok or YouTube. We'll use Airtable to build out specific scenes for your movie that let us generate beautiful images like this with all of the animation, including animation like this where you're just literally driving down the road. And then finally, after all of our scenes are complete, we'll take each of those scenes and generate a final movie just like this. I'll help you build the entire Airtable database and the automation step by step from scratch so that by the end of this video, you'll have a fully functional system just like this. Now let me show you how this system works. First, in this first tab here, this is where we define the movies that we want to build. This is going to be a collection of scenes that we build from our MidJourney and LumaLabs videos. Here you can see this movie that I'm building is 1080 by 1920, a 9 by 16 aspect ratio. So this is going to be a TikTok or a YouTube short. You build out each of these scenes in the scenes table. We've got a status. We define our image prompt here. And then we can also use MidJourney's cref directive to provide a sample image so that all of our video images come out the same across all of our different scenes. That way, once we merge all of our video files together into a single movie, each of the images and videos that we create will have a similar style and will make for a better end result when we merge them all into a single video. So you can simply add in a new scene for each movie. You can leave the status blank, then you can add in your image prompt, show me the Los Angeles city view with all the skyscrapers. And then again, I can use the same cref image so that the images that I produce will be similar to the others. Then I can simply tell the system to go ahead and generate the 4 images that I can then open up and look at and then select from. That's going to call this backend automation here, which is going to call the Go API. The status is going to get updated to generating images. Once those images are ready, they'll be automatically uploaded into Airtable so that we can open them up and take a look. And then from here, we can select the image that we want to upscale. They all look pretty cool, but I'm just going to pick this one here. So I would just move the image selector to number 2, and then I would go ahead and tell the system to upscale the image. That's going to trigger the next automation here, which will upscale the image. Then that image will come back into Airtable where we can review it. Looks pretty cool. And then we can go ahead and add in an image prompt based on what we see in the image. Quickly move forward across the city landscape like a drone was recording footage. And then I can go ahead and tell it to generate the video. That's going to call this automation here, which is going to generate the video on LumaLabs. It's going to loop through here and wait till the video is ready. And then we'll see that populate here in Airtable. Now we can see that the automation is finished. And now we have the new video in Airtable. Let's go ahead and check it out. This is going to be the first time I watch it myself. Pretty amazing the way it renders like that. Of course, you can always go back and change your scenes and upscale new images and change your prompts to get the video that you want. But once you're ready, you can jump over to the movie table and then you can go ahead and generate the final movie. That's going to call this final automation down here, which calls JSON2Video to merge all the videos into one movie. And once that process is done, it's going to upload that video into Airtable. And then from here, we can go ahead and watch the movie. You can now see it's 20 seconds long because we merged those 5-second videos together into one. We can skip through here and see the animations all as one single movie. And so you may have seen my other faceless video recently. In this particular video, I really wanted to focus in on the quality using MidJourney and LumaLabs and using the cref directive so I could provide a sample image to keep all of the video output the same and consistent throughout the video, and also being able to more carefully craft the prompts and being able to select from a few different images and deciding which one I upscaled to, and then also being able to define the actual video prompts to provide the animation that I wanted in each video. So now let's go ahead and start the build. I'm going to help you build out this Airtable with all of the columns and the automation step by step. We'll test each phase and then finally pull it all together into a final movie. Now, if you want access to the Airtable database so you don't have to build it, and also the make.com blueprint so you can simply import the blueprint and have the automations appear just like that, make sure to jump into my new community, the No Code Architects. Not only can you get access to a bunch of templates like today's video, including the Airtable base and the make.com blueprints, you can get tech support and get all your issues solved and join an active community of people just like you. All right, so to get started, I'm going to go ahead and create a new Airtable database. You want to pick your workspace, start from scratch. You can go ahead and close this window here. I'm going to go ahead and rename this base to MidJourney and LumaLabs. I'll change the color. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this table to movies. I'll rename this table here to movie name. Click save. Then I'm going to delete these default columns and just start from scratch. I could modify them, but this is easier. Then I'm going to create a number field, no decimal places, no thousands separator. We'll call this width, create field. Then I'll go ahead and duplicate it, rename it to height. So we have the width and height of our final movie. Go ahead and click save. Then I'm going to create another field called aspect ratio. This will be a formula. For the formula, I'm going to copy this in from my other Airtable database. You can go ahead and pause this and copy it just as it is. It's essentially using the height and width to calculate a overall aspect ratio that we can use in our automations. Go ahead and create the field. It's going to say invalid dimensions until we add that. I'll go ahead right now and start to put that in. We're going to make a vertical video. So the aspect ratio will be 9:16. And I'm going to call this movie the LA Story. I'm going to go ahead and delete these 2 rows because we won't be needing them. Then I'll continue on. I'm going to add a link to another record. I'm going to name the field scenes, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a new table. I'm going to name the new table scenes as well, and I'm going to allow linking to multiple records. I'm going to go ahead and create the field. Now I'm going to jump over to the scenes table. I'm going to hide this column here. We won't need to see that. Make sure you don't delete it. Then I'm going to rename this column to scene name. Click save. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish out this table and then come back to the movies table. I'm going to rename this view to movie scenes. I'm going to go ahead and add another column. I'm going to call it record ID. I'm going to scroll down to formula. I'm going to type rec. It's going to come up here, record ID. All you have to do is finalize the parentheses, create field. I'm going to go ahead and hide that field, create a new column. I'm going to call this image prompt. This will be a long text, create field. Next up, I'm going to add the cref link, type cref, and then I'll go ahead and select URL. Create field. Going to go ahead and add another formula. This is going to be called final image prompt. Going to pick a formula. I'm going to copy this in from my previous demo. You can pause the video and copy it just as is. What this is going to do is it's going to take our image prompt and include the cref link if we added it in this column here. Go ahead and create the field. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another column. I'm going to call this image go. This is going to be a checkbox, create field. Then I'm going to go ahead and add another column. Images task ID, single line text. Go ahead and create the field. Now I'm going to create another column. Images. This is going to be an attachment, create field. Go ahead and add another column. This is going to be the image selector, single select. We're going to add 4 options, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and create the field. For now, I'm going to go ahead and hide the final image prompt. We don't need to see it. We also don't need to see the image's task ID. I'm going to hide that now as well. Next up, I'm going to add another field, upscale, go. This will be a checkbox, create field. I put an exclamation here. I'm going to do the same back here. Save field. Then I'm going to add another field, upscale, task ID, single line text, create field. Going to go ahead and hide this column. We don't need to see it. Create another column, upscale image. We'll make this an attachment, create field. Next up, going to add another column. This is going to be the video prompt. We'll make this a long text, create field, add a new column, video go, exclamation mark, checkbox, create field. Almost done. I'm going to create another field. This is the LumaLabs task ID, single line text, create field. Go ahead and add another column, video, attachment, create field. Actually, I'm going to come up to the hidden fields here and I'm going to re-enable the movies column. Most likely going to be here back at the beginning. And then I'm going to go up to this caret here. I'm going to add lookup fields. Then I'm going to go ahead and enable the width, height, and aspect ratio. Add those fields. I'm going to go ahead and hide the movie again. And then I'm going to hide these fields as well. And now to finalize the scenes here, I'm going to go ahead and add a filter, add a condition, change the condition to where movies is not empty. And then I'm going to group it by movies. I'm also going to unhide this one more time. And because a scene can only be connected to one movie, I'm going to change it from movies to movie. And I'm going to disable the allow linking to multiple records. Go ahead and confirm that change. And then I'll go ahead and hide this one last time. Now I'm going to duplicate this view here. And then I'm going to rename this to orphan scenes. I'm going to disable the group. And then I'm going to reverse the filter to is empty. And all that's going to do is separate all of our scenes from scenes that are connected to a movie in our movie table and scenes that are not yet connected to an actual movie in our movie table. Now I'm just going to jump back to the movies table and finish everything out. We needed those columns in the scenes to finish our movies. So now I'm going to come up to this caret. I'm going to add lookup fields. I'm going to add video. I'm going to add that field. I'm going to rename it from video to videos. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now I'm going to add another column, movie go. This will be a checkbox, create field. Now I'm going to add one more column, movie. This is going to be an attachment, create field. And then I'm going to also create one last column, record ID. I always add these even if I don't use them, just so I can reference them if I need it. This is going to be a formula, Again, I can type rec. It's going to come up below, close the parenthesis, and create field. That just gives me the unique ID of this row in Airtable in case I need to use it in automation. I'm going to go ahead and hide this column. And then I'm going to rename this view to movies. And now we have our Airtable base built. If we made any mistakes, we'll correct it as we build out the automations. And if you're finding this video valuable, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It tells me what type of content you want more of. So now before we can build out this automation step by step, we do need to fill out a bit more information in our Airtable database so that we have some scenes to actually generate. So I'm going to jump over to the scenes table. I'm going to jump to the orphans. And here I'm actually going to enable the movie column here. I'm going to create a new row. I'm going to call this freeway number 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and add it to our LA story. Now that it has a movie, it's going to jump over to the movie scenes. And now it's going to group all of our scenes that we've got for our LA story here. And now I'm just going to copy over the values that I had in my other demo for our presentation here. So for the image prompt, I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste what I had in my demo. And I'm going to come over here to the row height and go to extra tall, so it's a lot easier to read. Here I want to create an ultra realistic image of Los Angeles and the freeway system up close on the 110 freeway with a bunch of cars. You can pause this and copy if you'd like. Now I am noticing that there was one column that we forgot to create. So I'm going to come up to this caret here. I'm going to insert to the left. I'm going to type status. I'm going to go with a single select. Now I'm going to add a few different options here. Generating images, ... generating upscale, ... generating video, ... and video completed. I'm going to make all of these red because that's going to be statuses where things are processing, and then I'll leave this green for done. Go ahead and create that field. Then I'm going to go ahead and move this bar just to the right of that field, so the status is always next to the scene name. And now we can continue. I'm going to go ahead and use my own CREF image link here. For these links, they do need to be public so that MidJourney can access them and use them when creating your images. I use this site here, which allowed me to update a image for free. And when you click on it, it pops right up. And this image is going to provide the styling and feel to MidJourney when we actually process this image prompt. Now, this is all we need for the next step of the automation. So now I'm going to jump over to make. I'm going to create a new scenario. And then for the trigger, I'm going to use a webhook, custom webhook. We're going to go ahead and create that webhook. Go ahead and click save. It's going to generate that remote URL. We'll come back and grab that, but make sure you click OK so that everything saves. Click save. Then I'll go ahead and rename my automation, Airtable to API, MJ, and LumaLabs. I'll go ahead and save everything. Now I need to jump back to Airtable and create a trigger so that when I hit this checkbox, it will call this remote webhook. I'm going to come up here to automations. For this automation, I'm going to go ahead and call it generate image. Going to add a trigger when a record matches conditions. The table will be the scenes table. The condition will be when the image prompt is not empty. Then we'll add another condition and the image go checkbox is checked. Now, if I jump back to data here and check this and then jump back to the automations, we should be able to choose a record and that should pop right up. Let's go ahead and select that now. Next up, we need to use a script. I'm going to go ahead and clear this out here and copy and paste in what I have from my demo. You can go ahead and pause the video and copy this just like I have it. Make sure to pay attention to the case of each of these different letters. It matters, like here in record ID and webhook URL. Now we need to add 3 variables to the left side here. Add variable, name, record, ID. Again, make sure you pay attention to the case. For the value, go ahead and click on this box and then hit the record ID. Go ahead and add another variable. Here we're going to type in webhook URL. Again, pay attention to the case. And then for the value, we're going to jump back over to make. We're going to jump into our webhook and we are going to copy address to clipboard, jump back to Airtable and drop that value right here. Now we're going to add one more variable. Name is action and the value is generate images. That's all we need to do here. We can go ahead and finish editing. Now we need to add one more step, which is to update the record. And here we're going to select the table again, scenes, and the record ID is going to be the record from the trigger. So go ahead and click this blue box. Here is the record from the original trigger, and we're just going to select this record ID. And then for the fields we're going to update, go ahead and choose fields. We're going to scroll down to the status, and we're going to update the status to generating images, and we'll choose one more field, and we will look for the image go checkbox. checkbox and we will simply uncheck it. And we do that so that once we check it, it'll call the remote webhook, but then it will uncheck so we can call it again later. So I'm going to jump back to the automation. I'm going to go to the run script here. Now, before I test this action, I'm going to jump over to make.com and I'm going to go ahead and run this module once so that it's waiting for a new request. Going to jump over to Airtable, going to test that action, jump back to make. You should see that come through. If not, go back through the video and double check your work. Make sure you're passing everything into this script properly, including the webhook and the actions. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and add a router. Going to use the flow control router. We're ultimately going to have 4 paths, but we'll just work on 1 for now. The first thing we're going to need to do is load up the record ID that we sent from this webhook. So I'm going to go ahead here and use an Airtable module. I'm going to go ahead and get the record. We'll need to create a new connection to our new Airtable base, add connection. Connection type is OAuth. I'm going to rename this to Luma Demo. Save. It's going to ask us to create a connection to our new base, add base. I'll go ahead and type Luma. Going to pick the new base that I'm using in this specific demo, grant access. Now I'll be able to select the base, MidJourney and LumaLabs. And for the table, I'm going to pick scenes. And for record ID, I'm going to use the record from our webhook. Record ID, then I can go ahead and click OK. Now I am going to add a filter here. We're going to base that off of the action from this webhook. The action is right there where the text is equal to generate images. Go ahead and click OK. Next up, I'm going to add an HTTP module. We're going to make a request. For the URL, we're going to use this URL. Go ahead and pause the video and copy it or jump into my new community for the entire automation with everything already installed. Go ahead and change the method to post. Then we're going to need to add a header. For the name, you can type X API key. Now to get an API key, you're going to need to go to goapi.ai and you're going to need to create an account by going to the dashboard. To create a new account, you will need to create a GitHub account. You can go ahead and log in. It's going to take you to that page where you can also create an account if you do not have one. Now keep in mind, this is not an official API from MidJourney, so you want to make sure you read all the terms and conditions before you proceed. In order to use the MidJourney API, you will need a developer account and you will need to add some credits to your account as well. You can do that by going to the billing page and making a manual payment. And then finally, to get your API key, you just go to My API Keys, and then you'll be able to make that API key and copy and paste it here, just like I'm doing here. Then you'll continue forward. For body type, go ahead and pick raw. For content type, you'll pick JSON. And for the request type, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in from my previous demo. You can pause the video and copy it. I have to correct these placeholders because in the copy paste, they broke. So for the prompt, I'm going to go right in between these quotes and use the final image prompt. And for the aspect ratio, I'm going to remove the broken placeholder and go right in between the quotes. And then I will expand the aspect ratio and use this inner value here, 1. And now next up, we need to create another automation inside Airtable. Going to jump back to the automations. I'm going to come here and create 2 different sections, one for triggers. And this is where we're going to drop in all of our automations that trigger make.com. And then I'm going to create another section for webhooks. And this is where we're going to store all the automations where we make a request to an external API and where they call our webhook to return our image to us. So after this webhook is called and it is successful, they are going to generate the image. And then once it's ready, they are going to call this webhook with the information about our new image. And then we'll be able to accept that request and write it back into this attachments field here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new automation. I'm going to call this the images webhook. I'm going to add a new trigger when webhook is received. It's going to give us this webhook right here. You can go ahead and click copy. Then we can come back to make.com and we can drop this into our webhook endpoint right in between these double quotes here. Once you have your webhook in here, you also want to come down here to parse response, yes, and click OK. And now the only thing left to do is to update our Airtable row with the image task ID from GoAPI. We'll go ahead and add another module. In this case, we'll use Airtable, update record. For our connection, we're going to use the one we previously made in this step here. You will need to update the permissions. Go ahead and click continue, just like you did before. Add the base, Luma, and make sure you pick the Airtable base that we're currently working on. Go ahead and grant access. Now go ahead and pick the base. and the table scenes. Now we're going to add the record from the webhook, record ID. And now we just scroll down to the images, task ID. And because we've never run this before, we don't actually have that. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to save the automation. And now I'm going to go ahead and click run once. Going to jump back to Airtable. Going to jump back to our trigger, but first I'm going to move this new automation into our webhooks section. Now I'm going to jump back to our trigger. And now for the first time, I'm going to test this action. Remember, we previously chose a record in step 1 from the record that we created, the freeway number 1 example. If I jump back over there real quick, we can see this is here, and we already have the image prompt and the cref, and we've already clicked image go. Back to the automation, back to the script. I'm gonna go ahead and type test action, jump over to make. We're gonna see that run. It's now calling the Go API. And now we do have some data back. Looks like our request was a success with a 200. I can open up the data and that was a success. And we have that task ID. So now we can come back to our Airtable module, to our images task ID. And now we can use this task ID here. Go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and click save once again. And now we do need to run this again once for a complete cycle and successful operation. We want to make sure that we save that task ID back into Airtable so that we can actually test this images webhook. So I'm going to come to make one more time. I'm going to run once. Going to come over to Airtable. I'm going to make sure that the run a script is again selected. I'm going to test that action. I'm going to jump back to make. Going to make sure that that is running. Looks like it was a success. We have a 200. Going to jump back to Airtable. Going to jump back to the data. Now, if I open up this row here, we should now see that the images task ID was added. So now we can jump back to the automation. We can go to our webhook. And now what you're looking for is a step successful, which means a webhook was fired and actually made it back into Airtable. Now, the only real question is the webhook that just came in the one that we first tested, or is it our most recent test? And it's our most recent test that we want to make sure we use because that's the one that wrote a valid task ID back into Airtable. So it's pretty easy to figure out. If we look here, our task ID starts with ADB. So if we jump back to Airtable and we look here at the body of the incoming webhook, we can expand this and we can see it actually says it ran a few seconds ago before it was a few minutes. And if we look at the task ID, it says ADB. So we're good to go. And if we look into the task result, we should see our image from the Go API. So all we need to do now is add the next step. We're going to do a find. In this case, we're going to search in the scenes table. We're going to find records based on a condition. And that condition is going to be where the image's task ID is. And then we'll use this gear and change it to dynamic and use this little blue button. And that way we can use the fields from the incoming webhook data, expand the body, and there is the task ID. So we're basically searching for the task ID that came in from the webhook in our database. Maximum record limit should be 1. We'll go ahead and test this action. We should see a success here where we pull up the freeway number 1. And now all we have to do is update our Airtable row. Update table is going to be scenes. Record ID is going to be the record in the find record step. Click into find records, scroll down, grab the Airtable record ID. For fields, we're going to choose images and we will use the blue box, import from the body. Scroll down, task result, we'll take the image URL, and then we'll simply also update the status, scroll all the way down to status, and we'll just leave that blank. And we can come down here to run configured, scroll down, run the test. Should be able to jump back to the data here and see that we now have our images and they are in that 9:16 aspect ratio. We should be able to open that up. And now we have 4 really cool images from MidJourney. So we'll come back and go to the automations and we can go ahead and turn this webhook on. I do not recommend turning on any of these triggers until everything is fully tested. But in terms of our webhooks, we can turn these on after we create them and we test them to be successful. So next up, we need to create the next automation that upscales the image. So I'm going to come back to Airtable and go back to the data. Now, in order to upscale an image, we do need to pick one. I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. I think it's cool looking. So I'm going to go ahead and pick image selector 4. I'm going to go ahead and check the upscale go. I'm going to jump back to the automations. Now this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this automation. I'm going to rename it to generate upscale. For this configuration, the table is going to stay the same, but we're going to change the conditions. I'll go ahead and just remove these. Add condition where the images is not empty. Obviously, we have to have images to upscale an image. Add condition and the image selector is not empty. Add condition where the upscale image is empty so that it won't run when there already is an upscaled image and overwrite it. And then of course, one more condition and the upscale go checkbox is checked. So now if I come down here to choose record, we're not seeing anything yet. So let's double check where the images Looks like I made a mistake here. It's not is empty, it's is not empty. So choose record. Now that freeway is showing up. So now we can move on to the next step. Now the only thing we need to change here is for this action, instead of generate images, we're going to generate upscale. Now I'm going to jump over to make, and we can start to build out this second path here. I'm going to adjust the filter where the action is generate upscale. Go ahead and click OK. We're going to go ahead and get the record. Airtable, get record. Base is MidJourney. Table is scenes. Record ID is from step number 1 in the webhook. Record ID, go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and just clone this module so to make it a little faster, change what I need to change. Here for the URL, we're going to change it to upscale. You can leave everything else the same. For the request content, I'm going to remove everything here. Now I'm going to paste in what I have in my previous demo, and then we'll fix everything. So you'll want to pause the video and copy everything just like this, or jump into the no-code architects for the blueprint template that'll have all of this already. Then we just need to update these broken placeholders. For the origin task ID, we're going to use the images task ID. For the index, we are going to use the image selector. Again, make sure you're putting these values inside the 2 quotes on both of these. And now we need to create a new webhook inside of Airtable. Jump back to Airtable. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this images webhook. Duplicate. Going to rename this to upscale webhook. Going to come to this first step here. Going to go ahead and copy this URL, come back to our automation, drop it here again in between the 2 quotes. I'll go ahead and click OK. Just like how we configured this automation, we need to run this one before we can actually update this one. So before I actually create that module, I'll just go ahead and save, run once, jump back over to Airtable, jump over to the generate upscale. And from this step, I'm going to go ahead and test the action, jump back to make. We see that come through, go through the filter. We got the record and sent it to the Go API. Let's check the status. Looks like that code was a 200. So if I come back to Airtable and our upscale webhook, it shouldn't take long before we see that request come in here to that webhook that we copied from here and added to the make module. You saw that come in here. So that looks good. Now we can come back to make. And because we have data here, we can finish up this last module. I'm going to go ahead and update a record from Airtable. Update a record. For the base, we're going to select MidJourney and LumaLabs. Again, for the scene, we'll pick scenes. For the record ID, again, we'll use the record ID from the webhook. And now we're going to scroll down and we're going to add in the upscale task ID. Grab that task ID. Go ahead and click OK. Click save. Now I'm going to go ahead and run that once more so that we can test the full process. I'm going to jump back to Airtable. I'm going to go to generate upscale. Again, I'm going to be on the run script and I'm going to go ahead and test action. Jump back to make. I'm going to see that come through. Let's check the status code. We have a 400 this time. Looks like this time it's complaining about a repeat task. And I'm just wondering here, if I go to the task ID, it's 3114. If I come back to Airtable and come back to the upscale webhook, I'm curious what task ID we have here. So it looks like a different task ID. So in order to just simulate this working, I'm going to grab this value here. I'm going to come over to Airtable. I'm going to go to the data. I'm going to go into the Airtable row. I'm going to expand the hidden fields and I'm going to update the upscale task ID to the previous, just so I can simulate this working. Now I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the find records, and it's going to use that ID that we just grabbed from this webhook right here. So now it's going to find that record. And again, remember, we just added that manually to this record here. So I'm going to go ahead and test that action. Now, one thing I forgot to do, because we copied this webhook from this one, it's looking at a different field. Notice it's looking for the images task ID. In this case, we need to look for the upscale task ID. It's going to break the value here, come back to the gear, go to dynamic, go ahead and click the blue box, go into the body of the webhook, grab that task ID, go ahead and run that search again. It's going to find that freeway. Now we can go ahead and update that record with the URL. Everything's good here on the scenes and the record ID, although we do want to update the upscale instead of the images. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this field here. I'm going to choose a new field, scroll down to the upscale image. Then I'm going to go to the blue box, go into the webhook body, scroll down to the task results, going to grab this image URL, going to move this to run configured, scroll down and run the test, jump back to the data here, and now we have our upscaled image. So if you see what I did there, all I did was use our previous success and updated that here so that we could get by that. Either way, you need a successful call to the Go API, which triggers this webhook. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on now. And then I should be able to come back to the data, and this time I'm gonna select a different image. I could have done it this way as well. When I had that duplicate task, I could have come back to the image selector, changed the selector, and then come back to the automation and trigger that again in Make to process this again with a different image. That way it wouldn't have had a duplicate task. I'm gonna go ahead and save where I'm at. I'm gonna go ahead and run once. I'm gonna come back up to Airtable. I'm gonna come to the generate upscale. I'm gonna go ahead and re-trigger this, and I'm gonna choose a new record. And I'm doing that because when you change one of these values, you have to re-trigger the automation. Otherwise it's gonna use the value that it already had when you picked that trigger. And I'm realizing here as well, I'm gonna have to uncheck the upscale go and also remove this image. I'm gonna jump back to the automation. Gonna go ahead and choose record. Still nothing showing up. Image is not empty. Image selector is not empty. Upscale. Make sure we check this checkbox. Choose record. Now we can select that row again, come back to the script. Again, make is waiting for our request patiently. We'll test that action, jump back to make. That's gonna go through. We should have a 200 this time. There we go. Jump back to Airtable. Won't be long before this webhook is called. Jump to the webhook trigger. Last time it was successful was 8 minutes ago. So this should just come through in just a few seconds. So it looks like it finally came through. If I jump back to the data, we're gonna see here that we have a new upscale image, and that is the number 2 image here. So now one thing I do want to mention is that when testing, I definitely noticed that you want to ask for the upscale image in a relatively short period of time after generating the images. I've had some errors when I tried to ask for an upscale image hours after I generated the images. So just make sure to select an image and make that process happen quickly to make sure that you don't run into any errors on your upscale image. You might also want to add some error handlers here to handle errors when you are working with the Go API. For this video, I'm gonna go ahead and skip that, but that's why I open up this bubble here to look at the status code, whether it's 200 or 400, to know whether everything is successful. So I'm gonna go ahead and click save, and then we'll move on to generating the video. All right, so now let's go ahead and build out this next automation here that is going to help us generate the video. Going to jump back to the live automation that we're building here. I'm going to come to the router and add a new route. I'm going to go ahead and add a filter now. This one is going to be on the action, generate video. I'll go ahead and click OK. And then we are going to get the Airtable record like we always do in these ones as well. Get record, use the same connection we've been using. For the base, we'll go ahead and select MidJourney and LumaLabs. And for the record ID, we'll use what we got in the webhook just like before. Grab that record ID, then we can go ahead and click OK. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and save the automation, auto align just to make things look a little bit better again. And now we can go ahead and continue to build this out. I'm going to resize things a little bit. So the next step after getting the record is to call the Go API once more. I'm going to go ahead and clone one of these previous modules just to save a little time. Connect it up here to this Airtable module. I'm going to go ahead and open up this module, and I'm going to switch out this URL here. You can pause the video and copy this just like I put here. It's going to stay a post. You'll need your API key. You can leave the body type and the content type the same. For the request content, I'm going to go ahead and remove everything from our clone, and I'm going to paste in what I have from my demo automation. You'll want to pause the video and copy everything just as I have it, or join the no code architects where everything is already filled out for you. I'm going to remove these broken placeholders from the cut and paste. And for the prompt, I'm going to add the video prompt. And for the image URL, I'm going to use the upscale image. Go ahead and expand that and grab the URL here. Make sure you insert those placeholders inside of the quotes, and you can go ahead and click OK. Now go ahead and click save. Now we're going to jump back over to Airtable. I'm going to come back to the scenes. I'm going to jump over to the video prompt, and I'm going to go ahead and paste in the video prompt I was using in my previous demo. Animate the cars driving on the Los Angeles freeway, and also animate the clouds to slowly move around. I'm going to go ahead, like we've done before, and go ahead and click the video go checkbox. I'm going to jump back over to the automations. I'm going to come up to the generate upscale, and I'm going to duplicate this automation, save ourselves a lot of time. In this case, I'm going to say generate video. I'll rename this to generate video. And we'll need to adjust the trigger as well. In this case, we're still going to be triggering off of the scenes table, but we are going to pick different conditions. I'll go ahead and remove these. The first condition will be when the upscale image is not empty. Add another condition, and when the video go checkbox is checked. If I go ahead and choose record, we should have something here now. Now I'm going to jump over to the run a script. These two values can stay the same, but in the action, we need to update this to generate video. Should be good there. I'm going to go ahead and update this while we're here. We're still updating the scenes table and the record ID is going to stay the same. But for the status, we are going to change this from generating images to generating video. And we're going to remove this checkbox. This should be video go. And so we're going to uncheck the video go. But that reminds me, since I copied this from the generate upscale, I can tell that I didn't correct those because these values here were of the generate image. So when I duplicated this to this, I forgot to change that. So real quick, I'm going to come back to generate upscale. I'm going to go to the update record. And for the status, I'm going to change that to generating upscale. And I'm going to remove this field here, change that to upscale go and uncheck that. So that looks good. I'm going to come back to generate video. Then I'm going to come back to our make automation. I always just like to save things. I'm going to go ahead and run once, come back to Airtable, jump over to the script. Again, we updated the action to generate video. If we test the trigger, jump back to make, should come through down here now. So now we got the record and we made the request to the Go API for LumaLabs. We got a status 200. So now we should have some data to use going forward. We have a task ID. So now we can finish out this automation. Next up, we're going to add a repeater. We're going to go to flow control and we're going to do a repeater. What this repeater is going to do is it's going to loop through and check periodically to see if that video has been generated. These two API calls had the webhook, but the LumaLabs video generation does not yet. I did talk to them and they said that it would be available soon, but for now we just have to do this loop. So for the initial value, you can leave it as 1. And then for repeats, let's go ahead and put 10. That means it's going to loop through this loop 10 times before it stops. Next up, we're going to get a variable. I'll explain this in a little bit. Go to tools, get variable. We'll get the variable name status. Obviously, the first time this runs, the status will be empty. Then we're going to add another module. Here, we're going to go ahead and use the sleep module. It'll put the automation to sleep. We'll go ahead and just pick 120 seconds. Go ahead and click OK. Next up, we need to check back with the Go API to see if the video is done. I'm going to go ahead and clone this HTTP request one more time and add it to the end here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. For the URL, I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste in what I had from my previous demo automation. Pause the video and copy this just as I have it with that slash. I do need to fix this broken placeholder from the pasting from the other automation. And we are going to use the data, this task ID. This one is going to be a GET request. And for body type, we can go back to empty and we can leave everything else here just like that. Again, we still want to parse the response, but it is a GET method instead of a post. And we don't have to post any information here because we're just getting a status update on this task ID. We can go ahead and click OK. Now I do want to simulate to see if that video is ready yet. I'm going to come here to the output of our module, come to the data, go to the data here. I'm going to grab this task ID and then I'm going to come here and run this module only. I'm going to drop in that task ID here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. It's going to go ahead and run. We got a status code 200. Let's look at the data in here. It looks like it was able to finish that video. If it hasn't yet, go ahead and just wait until that video is ready and then you can proceed. Next up, we will go ahead and update Airtable, pick the Airtable module, update record, go ahead and pick your base, MidJourney, LumaLabs, table scenes. In this case, we're going to go ahead and update the record from the original webhook, record ID. For the video, you can go ahead and add an item for the file URL. You can use the data that we looked up just a few minutes ago manually. You can go into the data, and you can grab the generation video URL. Then for the LumaLabs task ID, you can grab that from data task ID. And then you just want to find that status again here, unselect the map, and then from the drop down, you can grab video completed. Go ahead and click OK. Next up, we're going to go ahead and set a variable. In this case, you can just type set and you can grab set variable. Make sure not to set multiple variables, set variable. And for the variable name, you'll pick status and then you can just type completed and then you can go ahead and click OK. Now we need to step back and add 2 filters, one right here. What we're going to look for is whether the status in this previous step, which is right here, is not equal to completed. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. And then right after the Go API call here, we want to add a filter as well. And then for the condition here, we'll look into the data into the data, into this status here is equal to completed. And then we can go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and click save, and then I'll explain what's happening here. So when we make the request to the webhook for generating a video, it comes down this path. We get the information for the video, and then we make the request to make the video. Now the video takes 5 to 10 minutes to create. So we need to loop with this repeater until that video is ready. So initially we get the variable to see what the status is. And if that status is not equal to completed, then it will move forward and it will sleep for 2 minutes. And then after that 2 minutes, it will make the request to the Go API and it will see if that video is ready. If the status is completed, it will go ahead and update Airtable, and then it will go ahead and update the status of the variable to completed, and then it will come back to the loop. It will get the variable, which is now completed, and it will no longer do this again, and it will no longer run these previous steps. But if we make the call to the Go API and it says that it is not completed, then it will loop back to the repeater here. It will check the status, which is not completed. It will sleep again. It will check it, and then we'll filter out whether or not it is complete. And so basically what happens is that until it's complete, it will just keep looping through these sections here until it's complete, and then it will finalize. It will update Airtable, update the status, and then it will no longer run this section of the automation anymore. The repeater will exhaust itself, and then the automation will finish. And so because we've never done a full test with this automation, if we come back to Airtable, we still don't have the LumaLabs task ID in video. So let's go back and just trigger this once again. We'll come back to Airtable. We'll go to the automation. From this run a script test, we will go ahead and trigger the automation. From here, we should see it make the call to the Go API. We have a 200, and now you can see it's going into the repeater because the status is not completed. And of course it won't be completed because this is the first time it's being called. It will be nothing but empty. We come in here, we have a empty status. So it progressed to the next phase where it sleeps. After 2 minutes, it will then make the call to the Go API to see if the video is ready. And so you can see here, it checked the Go API. And if we look into the data here, it is giving us a status 200, but if we look at the data and the metadata and the generation here, it still says that it's processing and not complete. And so when it checked the overall status and it was not completed, then it went ahead and did another loop. So now it's going to sleep for another 2 minutes. While you're testing, always make sure to run this manually and just inspect this. These APIs are always getting updated on the daily. And so you never know how these things are going to change. So just make sure you're just looking at these values and changing anything you need to change in your automation. It's always possible by the time you watch this video, they've added the webhook. And so you'd want to just copy the same method as we've done here if they have added that. And as always, you can come into the Go API docs and check out their Luma API to get the most up-to-date information. So now I just jump back to the automation, and it looks like this time if we come into the result here, operation number 2, let's go ahead and look at the data. Now we have a message success. So it should have written that video back to Airtable. Let's jump back to Airtable, jump back to the data here, and now we have a video that we should be able to watch. And now we've got cars going up and down the freeway. So depending on how far you want to go with this, you could stop here. Now we've automated the image creation and the upscaling and the video creation. So if that's all you wanted to be able to do, then you could stop here and just continue to use that. You could come back to your automations and you could turn this part of the program on because we've tested those and everything seems to be working. The only thing that we haven't technically tested is these updates because we've always ran the run script on its own and we never actually ran these updates. So I'm going to just look at these updates and just do like a visual on them. So here, when this generate image triggers, it's updating the status to generate images, and then it's unchecking the image go. Here we are updating the status to generating upscale and unchecking the upscale go. And here we are updating the status to generating video and unchecking the video go. So that looks good. But now if you wanted to take it one step further and you wanted to generate multiple scenes in your movie, remember we set up this movie before and we have one scene connected to it, then you could always come and add additional scenes. I'm going to add 3 new scenes. I'm just going to copy those values in from my previous database. We have one scene of the Griffith Observatory, the LA beaches, and the Los Angeles skyline. I'll copy in these prompts as well. And then I'm going to drag down the cref just like that. And now that I've turned on these automations here, I should be able to say images go. we should see the status change here, and we should see this uncheck itself. If I jump over to the automation, we now have a record waiting because I never turned that automation on. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on. I'm gonna process the old data, which is the one that I just sent. And now you can see it's now processing that image that we just sent. Let's go ahead and take a look at the status. That's a 200. Jump back to Airtable. Just gonna take a few seconds. We should see those images pop up into this field here, and it should clear out our status. Now that process ran, it cleared out the status, and now it's giving us the 4 images of the Griffith Observatory, so we can pick the one that we want to use. This one looks pretty cool, image 4, so I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna select image 4, then I'll go ahead and do the upscale go, jump back to make.com. Now we've got that running here, processed. That should just take a few seconds. Notice it's now generating the upscale, and it already unchecked the upscale go for us. In just a second, we should see our new 9:16 upscale image. Now that's coming in here, and you'll notice that it's clearing out our status. Now what I am gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and copy in my video prompts from my previous demo. Now obviously it would be best to wait for the image to actually see what it is and really fine tune that prompt for that specific image. This video prompt says slowly pan to the left and zoom into the mountain landscape. Let's go ahead and generate that video. Jump back over to our automation. Looks like it's running now. And there we go. And here's our video. Let's take a quick look at it. Pretty cool. Look at that 3D effect back there. Really beautiful image with really beautiful motion. So I'm not going to make you wait, but I'm going to go through that same process of generating all the images, selecting the image, upscaling that image, and then generating both videos. And then I'm going to move on to the next step here in the movies scene, where I show you actually how to combine those different scenes into one final movie, and then we'll be done with the video. But if you're having issues completing the entire scene, then go ahead and stop here and go back and debug based off of the video, get that all working, and then meet me back here with 4 completed scenes, all with 4 different videos. And then I'll show you that last automation where we use JSON2Video.com, this platform right here, to stitch the 4 videos into a single video. All right, guys, so we're back, and I now have 4 different scenes. You really only need 2 separate scenes to test this next phase. 2 scenes that have been completed all the way through and have a animated video that we can stitch together with another animated video, just like I'm showing here. Now this one is triggered from the movies table. We created this at the very beginning, the LA story. We made it a vertical video, 1080 by 1920 with a 9:16 aspect ratio. And I'll go ahead and expand this row to extra tall. We can see these different scenes here. If I collapse it a little bit, we see we have the Freeway 1, Griffith Observatory, LA beaches, and the LA skyline. And then we can see we have those 4 videos that are being pulled from the scenes table through this lookup field. And now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and initiate the final movie go checkbox. I'll go ahead and do that now because we don't have any automations on that yet. That will generate that final movie by combining these 4 videos using the platform JSON2Video.com. Now, obviously, to move on to the next steps, you will need to create an account and grab your API key. Might as well do that now. If you don't have it, looks like they've got a free API key that you can try. So I'm going to jump back to Airtable, and you might be getting used to this. I'm going to jump to the automations, and here in our triggers, I'll rename this triggers. I'm going to duplicate the generate video, duplicate, and here we're going to say generate movie. In this case, we are going to trigger on the movie table, not the scene. So that's going to break just about all the conditions here. We'll just remove those. And here for the first condition, we will make sure that the movie go checkbox is checked. And we will also make sure that the videos from the scenes is not empty. And then we'll move to the script here. And these can stay the same except for the action. We're going to generate movie. So we'll need to change that. And then let's check out the update record. This is going to have to change. When we copied it, it was working off of the generate video. So we want to change the table to the movie. It's going to break these fields here. So go ahead and just remove those. The record ID can stay the same, but we're going to update these fields. All we need to do here is add the movie go, and we'll just uncheck it. So after it runs the script, it will just uncheck it so that we can always fire it off again. Now let's go ahead and see if we have something to pull from. I'm going to choose a record. We should have the LA story. And now I can move to the run a script. But before I do that, let's go ahead and continue to build out our automation. I'm going to go into the automation. I'm going to add our final route. We're almost there in the final stretch. Going to add a condition here. The action is going to be generate movie. We can go ahead and click OK. I'm going to realign everything. Going to get a record, Airtable, get record. Use the same connection for the base. We will pick our current base, but for the table, make sure you pick the movie table. And for the record ID, we're going to use the webhook record ID. We can go ahead and click OK. And now what we're going to do next is we're going to iterate over all of the different movies. We're going to build a JSON variable that we can send to the JSON2Video API call. We're going to assemble all the scenes together. We're going to create the final JSON, and we're going to make that final API call to JSON2Video. So first up, we're going to add an iterator. You can go to flow control, make sure you grab the open iterator. And for the array, we are going to use the videos from the scene. You can go ahead and click that right into this field here. You can go ahead and click OK. Next up, we're going to go ahead and create a JSON. So you can type JSON, create JSON. Now you're going to be asked this question here. Go ahead and click add. For your data structure name, go ahead and put JSON2Video scene, and then go ahead and go to generate. And for the sample data, there is a link in the description of this video that will let you open up this document. And you're going to want to grab all of the code that is right here, nothing before and nothing after. Go ahead and copy that. Come back to your automation and drop that sample data into this box here, and then click generate. From here, you can just scroll down and click save. Now you will need to add one element. Just go ahead and click add item. And for the source, you are going to use the URL. For the type, you are going to type video. For the zoom, you can go ahead and put 0. For the width, you are going to use the width from this record here. You can see that you have the width. For height, go ahead and click into that and use the height. For duration, you're going to want to use -1. That just tells JSON2Video to use the full length of the video. And for position, just type center, center. Make sure you spell everything correctly or it will fail. Go ahead and click OK. You're going to get a warning, but you can ignore that. It's just telling you that this module can't be the last one in your automation. Go ahead and move forward and add another module. Here we're going to use the JSON module again, and we're going to parse the JSON, and we can use the value from the previous step. Go ahead and click into JSON string and grab that JSON string and go ahead and click OK. Now you're going to go ahead and close that iterator here in the flow control array aggregator. Now because this automation has never run before, we don't have the information that we need to finalize this array aggregator. For the source module, you're going to want to pick this iterator here in 19. Go ahead and click OK. Then you go ahead and save the module. It's going to give you a warning. Go ahead and click save anyway. And now we are going to go ahead and run once. It's going to give you a warning again. Go ahead and run anyway. Now we're going to jump back to Airtable. We already loaded in our row here from choosing the record. We've got that LA story. Now we can move forward to the run script. We're going to go ahead and test that action. Jump back over to make. We're going to see that go down this path this time, and it's going to run all the way through. Remember, we have 4 scenes, so you should see this run 4 times. And now we have run this automation and we can finalize this aggregator. Now what you should see here is in this section here, we have the parse JSON elements. You can go ahead and click that and click OK. Now we are almost done here. Go ahead and add the next module. We're going to add a JSON, create JSON, and we are going to add another structure. This time we are going to call it the JSON2Video movie. Go ahead and click generate. And again, in the description below, there will be a link that takes you to this document where you can cut and paste this entire section here. Don't get anything before or anything after. Copy. Drop that into the sample data. Go ahead and click generate. Then you can just go ahead and click save. For the ID, you're going to want to use this record ID from the original webhook. For FPS, you can go ahead and use 25. For cache and draft, you can go ahead and select no. For width, again, you're going to use the width and height from the previous step, width, and click into height and then use the height. For the scene, you'll want to enable this checkbox here. You'll click into that and then just grab the array from the array aggregator. Now for the exports, you're going to want to go ahead and click add item. For destinations, you'll go ahead and add a new item. Now for type, you're going to go ahead and type webhook. For content type, you're going to type application/JSON. Make sure you spell everything correctly. Application/JSON. Now for the endpoint, just like we've done for the other modules, we're going to come back to Airtable and we are going to create a new webhook. Go ahead and come down to create automation. You can drag that into the webhooks section here. We're going to add a new trigger when webhook is received. Now we can grab that URL, copy it to the clipboard, come back to our automation, and drop that here into our endpoint. Make sure there are no spaces before and after any of these values. That will cause a problem. In your webhook, everything, no spaces before or after. In your content type. And after you have that, then you'll want to just make sure you add the quality. That is high. And for resolution, you want to put custom. And with that, everything should be good. You can go ahead and click OK. Now, next up, we just need to add the HTTP call to JSON2Video. So go ahead and add the HTTP module once again, like we've done here. It should probably be here, but if you don't see it, you can type HTTP. We're gonna make a request. Here I'm gonna paste in what I have from my demo. You can pause the video and copy this exactly as I have it, or you can jump into the no-code architects and get this entire automation. You're gonna wanna change the method to a post. You're going to add a new header. For the name, you're going to put X API key. Then you're gonna wanna paste in your key from JSON to video. For body type, you're gonna pick raw. For content type, you're going to pick application JSON. And for the request content, you're simply going to use the JSON string that we constructed here in the previous step, JSON string. And then you can go ahead and say parse response equals yes. And then you can go ahead and click OK. You can save your automation. And now we can go ahead and run once. We can jump back to Airtable. We can jump over to our generate movie. And now we can go ahead and trigger this once again. Jump back to make. We should see it come down this path. It's going to loop through, build the JSON. Then it's going to make the call to JSON to video. You can open this up. We have a status code 200 looking good. I recommend that if you get a 200 but nothing comes into your new webhook, and let's update that. This is the movie webhook. If nothing comes into this, although we see that it is now, if for some reason nothing ever comes into this webhook, jump into the render logs and see if there are any errors coming in from your most previous requests. And you'll notice here that the duration of the most recent video that I just issued is 20 seconds long, which is perfect because I have 4 videos that are each 5 seconds. So I can jump back to Airtable. I can check out the body. Looks like we have our new video here. So the last thing we need to do is just simply update the row of our movie, select the table, select movies, select the record ID by checking the blue box. Now you can go into the body and you can scroll down. You should see this ID. Remember, in our automation, we sent the record ID of this row that we're working with to JSON to video in this ID field. And then they sent it back to us so that we could look it up in Airtable. And now we simply need to go to the fields we want to update, scroll down to the movie attachment field, go to the blue box, go into our body of the webhook, grab the URL from the result, go to run configured and run the test. And now if we jump back over to Airtable in our movie, we now have that movie here and we should be able to watch the entire show. We got the freeway, Griffith Observatory, the beaches, that's really amazing. And the drone flying through the LA skyline. So there you go. Now we can just come back to the automations, make sure we turn them all on. We can jump back to our make automation that was already turned on. And we now have a complete system. Whenever we want to create a new movie, we just create that new movie here. Next movie, you'll put in the width, height, and aspect ratio. Then you can jump over to scenes. And then you can go ahead and just jump into orphan scenes, add a new scene here, and then you can add it to the movie. In this case, the next movie, it's going to disappear from the orphan scene because we assigned it to an actual movie. And now we're going to see that we now have the first scene ready for the next movie. And then from here, you can always just add new scenes from here. And if you wanted to, just a little bit about Airtable, if you wanted to remove all of the completed movies from the movie scenes, you could always just duplicate this view and you could say completed scenes. And you probably don't necessarily want to filter on the video completed status because these might be completed, but the movie is not. So to make this work, you'd need to come back to the scenes. I'm going to jump to the orphan scenes just because it's already there. And I would need to add a lookup field off of the movie. I'm going to add a lookup field. I'm going to get access to the actual movie. I'm going to add that. I'll hide this field. But now what I can do is I can come back to the movie scenes. I can come up to the filter and I can add a condition. I can say, and the movie from movie is empty. And so now you'll see that the completed movie, the LA story, disappeared, but the first scene did not. And then I could come back to completed scenes and then I could just tweak this so that it showed all of the scenes that were completed. So I would add a condition, change this here to this filter, and then I would say is not empty. And now it's only showing the scenes from completed movies. So there you go. If you want to check out another video on Faceless videos where I build a whole orchestration system on how to generate the movie from scratch, including the prompts and all of the scenes, so you didn't have to necessarily do it manually. It generated the movie just from a news article and it completes the entire process, generating the story, generating the scenes, generating the images, and it just spits out a cool video at the end. Make sure to check out the video that's popping up on your screen and I'll see you there.